Welcome to the Period Besties podcast with Stasha and Katie. Think about it as chatting with your best friends about all the TMI stuff you've never talked about before with two period coaches who've been helping hormones collectively for over 20 years now. I'm Stasha.
And I'm Katie, and we're pulling back the curtain on what it's like in the world of menstrual coaching. From puberty to menopause and everything in between, we're here to show you how period coaching can save the day. We'll share practical tips and information you can put to immediate use to improve your hormones and happiness.
We're removing the mystery, ending the taboo, and shining a light on just how powerful period coaching can be.
So whether you need period coaching or are considering becoming a period coach yourself, these episodes are going to help you. We'll share stories, coach live on air, and bring smart, savvy guests to share their wisdom too. Let's start today's episode.
That was such a beautiful story of just hope and really talking a little bit more about Fertility Awareness Month and things that we can focus on. That's not just diet. I think I really liked where the conversation started because we talked about how to support our nervous system, different spiritual avenues we could look into, energy healers, spiritual advisors, supporting your womb, and how there is research now on how what we say to our bodies actually affects our bodies. And I really liked that part of the conversation because so much of fertility is focused on the medical side of it. And I think it was just a really great way to bring in different avenues for all of us to look into and see if that could support us.
Yeah, I like how you said the hope bit because it is very much when you're dealing with fertility, you're shuttled right into things like IVF and hard choices. And this conversation really opened up a lot of avenues. Like before you start IVF, you may want to try some of these things, or you've tried IVF and it's not working. So it might be time to try some of these things. It really opened, like she said, the door can be open if you want it to be open. There's other things to try other than just those certain specific avenues that the fertility clinics walk you through. So I found that really enlightening and really helpful. And even on like a non-fertility, some of the things that she was saying, like, just because it hasn't worked time after time after time, if you really feel like this is the journey for you, this is, keep moving at it. And I just, it's like, I can see that just in my personal life outside of like fertility things, but just like, oh yeah, that's right. If it doesn't work, you just, try something new, try a different avenue, keep, what's the thing that's going to help shift the attitude. And if you keep that heart womb connection open and you keep that, hope moving forward, something comes out of it that's good, that's positive, that takes you in a good direction. So it was funny, like even as we were talking about fertility, I just kept going, oh gosh, that's true for my life though. That's got nothing to do with fertility, like baby making fertility.
100%. Yeah. And I think, fertility can mean so many different things, right? It's really about longevity and all of the things that keep us healthy too. Like that's what I really enjoyed what she was saying about just how your body, if there's things that are not connected in your body, then you're not going to feel your best. So no matter where you are in your life journey, it's important to have that mind-body connection.
Absolutely. So without further ado, I hope you guys really enjoy this interview. It was so lovely and so full of hope and joy, vitamin J, as Aimee says. So go get your dose of vitamin J with our interview here today. Welcome to the Period Besties podcast. We are here today with another fabulous interview. We're here with Aimee, who has some incredible books. I was doing a little loving online stalking, and I can't wait to read them all now. But we're definitely going to dive in today and talk a lot about the fertility things, the most recent book that came out. So I'm really excited to dive in with you today. So if you don't mind sharing with the listeners a little bit of who you are and how did you get into this menstrual work?
Hi. Well, thank you so much to the both of you for having me. And I love the name of your podcast too. I love it. Period Besties. That's great. I guess technically by trade, I'm an acupuncturist and herbalist. And I went to acupuncture school I graduated from acupuncture school 20 years ago. Prior to that, I'm a medical school dropout. So I have a biology and chemistry degree. I have graduate level degrees in neuroscience and biochemistry and all sorts of things. And yeah, I've been, in the vein of supporting women on their path to health for 2 decades. And the fertility stuff kind of came around, probably early in my practice. I came out of acupuncture school very determined to not specialize in anything. I just wanted to be a general practitioner. But most people, especially 20 years ago, who were seeking alternative medicine care were women. And so, yeah, I started seeing all sorts of menstrual issues and fertility issues, anxiety, digestive, that type of thing. And so, one thing led to another. And I think being a scientist kind of at heart, like I was always a science nerd, all through growing up and graduate school and undergraduate school, seeing changes in hormones on the lab work, seeing positive pregnancy tests, obviously healthy children coming through, seeing signs and symptoms of endometriosis or PCOS alleviate themselves, really, not alleviate themselves, but get alleviated, I should say, really lit me up. And so that's kind of what happened. And then, I started writing books in, I think, 2009. I wrote my first book. It came out in 2010. And that was really just more of a general guide for women on improving their health, and called Chill Out and Get Healthy. And then as I started practicing for longer, and I had a practice in New York City as well, I just started seeing more and more women struggling with fertility challenges. And, this goes back to that a lot of fertility doctors love acupuncture because there's some solid research behind doing acupuncture in the lead up to IVF and really pre and post transfer, increased success rates. So we're always on the referral list. And so you just see a lot of fertility. And then I wrote, Yes, You Can Get Pregnant. And that point, and that was in 2013. Came out in 2014, and that really then put me on the map, as at the time too. I mean, considering now all the fertility books that are out there, maybe there was 5 or 7, and I was one of them. So that definitely put me on the map. And that book's going to be 10 years this year, which is insane. In July, 10 years. I'm going to do a 10-year revision. Hopefully, we're working it out right now. But yeah, and so I don't know. Then it's, and I entitled that book, Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, really to be not triggering as some people find it, but to be empowering, as, this is figure outable. And oftentimes it's, we're dealing with a lack of a proper diagnosis or a lack of proper detective work to understand, at the root what's going on with the female hormonal system and the menstrual cycle, and why is the body not prioritizing fertility, for some reason, right? I always see, and I'd be curious how you guys feel about it too, but one thing I always say is the menstrual cycle is a luxury, right? It's the body saying, I have enough reserves, I have enough to give up, I have enough to ovulate, I have enough to say, like, yeah, I could house a human, which is the biggest task a body could do, and and I can do this with some regularity, and produce, mature these follicles and bring, ovulate this egg and have this healthy uterine environment with proper blood flow and proper hormone communication in order to create life. And so to me, it's really, and that's my Chinese medicine training too. It's just really about kind of uncovering the why behind this lack of prioritization.
Yeah. And so last time I saw you, I interviewed you for Summit years ago, and I cried when I interviewed you because I was in the process of trying to figure out my own root cause of like what was going on, had a few miscarriages and, trying to put all the pieces together. And I still cry when I think about it because there's a lot of trauma in that process, right? And I do also want to acknowledge like this. When this is released, it'll be the end of Fertility Awareness Month. And there is a lot of trauma, whether it's first pregnancy or secondary infertility. And we kind of wanted to start the conversation off just talking about nervous system and like how to regulate, because we see that with so many of our clients. And with it being 2024, we're under so much more stress than any other previous generation with everything that rings or dings and makes noise. So because of the acupuncture background, kind of like starting there with that piece of the puzzle, because I think a lot of times we go directly to IVF, go directly to the fertility clinic without taking a closer look at like what's actually happening in our system.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the talk, right? I think it used to be labeled as more of the mindset piece or the mental emotional piece. And now, I actually really like the coining of the nervous system. And it really falls into what I was already touching on is like, why is the body not prioritizing this? And is there a sense of safety in the body? And now I know that word can be triggering, talk about trauma of like, oh, so I'm unsafe and that's why I'm not getting pregnant. And it's like, first of all, no blame in any of this. And I would say probably for all of you, you didn't create this. You're not in this club because you wanted to be in this club. You didn't choose to join it. But something isn't meshing in your life and in your nervous system and maybe in your physiological system, your biology as well. And also now I love all the research, right? My book Body Belief was really heavy into the research between the thoughts you think and how it impacts physiology. And like there's so much research on that now that we know clearly how we kind of take in the world, interpret the relationships we surround ourselves with, the thoughts we think, and ancestral traumas and carrying that line of trauma through really impacts our nervous system. And unfortunately, it severely impacts our endocrine system, which is our hormones. And I think it just puts that body in this space where it's like, I don't know that I can handle anything more. And so you might be menstruating and ovulating regularly, but that, I call it in Body Belief, I coined the term emotional inflammation. And so there's all this talk about physical inflammation and anti-inflammatory diet and antioxidants and all that, but no one's really focusing on this emotional inflammation part. And in fact, when I wrote Body Belief, I reached out to someone, a doctor I really looked up to, and she, to endorse the book. And she said, I can't endorse it. It's just, there's not enough science yet to back up this emotional inflammation conversation you're having. And that was 2017. And I was like, this is kind of insane to me, actually, which I thought the book was very well researched. But either way, I bring that up because even then it wasn't that recognized. It was like, no, this is all environmental toxins. This is all, an anti-inflammatory or inflammatory lifestyle and diet and that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, Chinese medicine, what called me to Chinese medicine, what kind of led to me dropping out of medical school was understanding that Chinese medicine looks every disease, and disease is just disharmony. It doesn't mean you have to have like cancer or even like PCOS or endo or something diagnosed. It just means there's a disharmony in the body. Something isn't jiving, and every disease state has an emotional root as well. And it's our job to lead the patient to kind of connect those dots as well. And so what, acupuncture just alone, like if someone were to say, what does it do? I'll be like, it restores homeostasis. It brings the body back into balance. It helps the body feel safe again. Right. And so doing that regularly, it has a positive impact. Like now we can look at things like cortisol or the adrenal hormones or things like that and name it. And I think there's actually pretty valid research out there now too, showing what acupuncture actually does to the stress hormones. And that's pretty cool to see. But yeah, to me, I think another thing I always say is like, you could have the perfect fertility diet, and I'm doing air quotes for those of you that can't see me, and on all the perfect fertility supplements or, all the things to balance your hormones. But if you're not looking at that emotional piece, I think you're missing 50% of the game, And it's not to say women in war zones don't get pregnant, because they totally do. And women under stress don't get pregnant. They totally do. But for some of us, and I think now too, there's like functional nutrigenomics that we can look at and how our epigenetic predispositions, manage stress a lot better than others. And then that's all the layers we're seeing. And I think it's like, it's on a spectrum, so it's like, sure, we could clean up the diet, we could change the lifestyle, we could sleep more, all those important things. And then work on the nervous system piece too. And for some women, it's a little bit of tweaking, and for some, it's a lot. And you just kind of never know until you're dealing with the actual situation and scenario.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of the diet, you have a great book on that. And before we dive into that, I did want to ask just so we talk about all of these other things, and like Katie said earlier, people jump right into IVF and these kinds of fertility things, but you really focus on egg quality. So before we get into the book bit, which I really do want to do, but before we do that, would you tell us a little bit about what the importance of focusing on egg quality first is and the outcomes? Like, what have you seen with your work doing that?
Yeah. And I mean, also to be honest too, the book is called The Egg Quality Diet. Again, I'm not jumping ahead, but just giving an example because that's the most researched thing for women going through fertility challenges, right? The book could have been called The Anti-Inflammatory Diet or The Hormone Balancing Diet, to be really honest. And I'm always honest, like if people, like just like in this conversation of like, yeah, that's just what we decided to title it because I do see egg quality. I kind of started looking really deeper into all of it. When I wrote Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, there's like a last chapter of like other things that could be impacting your fertility. But like you do the research and you're like, all this unexplained infertility is just lazy flipping medicine is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, and so if we really look at the research, or we just even look at things like endometriosis and PCOS, two of the most common causes of fertility challenges, they're both, PCOS is considered more in the autoimmune camp. Endometriosis is an inflammatory systemic disease state that, as I always say, responds really well when I treat it like an autoimmune disease. It's not an autoimmune disease, but it responds really well. And what I mean by that is if our work is to lower inflammation, increase nutrient absorption, regulate the immune system, those disease states will calm. But then also, looking more at the research too of like most women dealing with secondary or primary infertility, and I hate that word, but have an autoimmune condition that's undiagnosed, right? Hashimoto's or celiac or, countless other ones. So you start to kind of look at all the research and then obviously I have a lot of clinical experience. At the height of my career, I was seeing 60 patients a week for over a decade, 15 years almost. Like, do the math. I've seen a lot of fertility cases. And it started to become this very common theme where you're like, okay, there's emotional inflammation, as we just discussed. There's a lot of physical inflammation. There's nutrient malabsorption. There's poor digestion. There's a dysregulated immune system, sleep deprived, overexercise, whatever it is. And so you come and you globally try to treat all of that. What does tend to happen is you'll improve mitochondrial function and cellular quality, and that does extend to the health of the cells in the ovaries, and also I would say the health of the cells in the in the testes, and so yeah, it's like, and also like I just, yesterday we just got news from one of our girls. I mean, she's only older than she was at her previous IVF. I think she's 43 now. She was 41. Her previous IVF, she got nothing that came back normal, right? So she was able to grow, I think, 3 out to blast, doing IVF, and those IVF, warriors, what I'm talking about. So 3 made it to day 5. They sent those off for genetic testing. 0 came back normal. 2 years later, I'd say 6 months of really tuning in. And so much of, I tell you, I now have a team psychotherapist, right? Like we have a PhD psychotherapist on our team now because we take the mental emotional part that seriously. We do EMDR, we do hypnosis, clinical hypnosis, I want to say too. This girl and her husband have taken the whole program so seriously. So from the diet, of course, and the lifestyle, but they are so invested in the mental emotional piece. It's actually gorgeous to witness. But she was able to send off 4, and she's 43, and 2 came back normal. That's a 50% normal rate. That's actually, it blows the socks off of most. 30% is considered pretty good. So, I have issues with PGT testing, and there's some research questioning PGT testing, but like she wanted to test because of her history of losses and all of that. And I get it. It was important to them. But that's just like one example of you can get older and you can make better quality embryos. And that's not what we're told at all. Yeah. So that's why I probably focus on it so much too, because I like to ruffle feathers and question the norm. And I like to, encourage these traumatized women and their partners to question what they've been told. Where did we get this information that only 5% of women in their 40s are getting pregnant? Like show me the research. There isn't a single research paper out there. There's clinical observations, and it's also 5% per month. It's not 5% ever. No one ever clarifies that either, by the way. So that means in 1 year time, that's about 60% pregnancy rate, just FYI. But so anyway, why the egg quality piece? Like, I just think what we're doing is we're improving the quality of every single cell in your body. And that should trickle down also, which I think is a really important and overlooked subject, uterine environment. I'm also improving the receptivity of that lining, the health of that lining, the thickness of that lining. And these are things that just aren't talked about. It's just kind of like, here's your papers, your egg quality is set in stone, good luck. You're only going to get worse from here on out. So, rush to IVF. And it's like, okay, and I'm all for Western, I have lots of doctor friends. I work out of fertility clinics. I love some of the doctors I work with. They're brilliant. They're detectives and they do a great job. And they're innovative and they're thinking outside the box, but a lot of them aren't, unfortunately. But I'm not against fertility treatments. I support my girls wherever they are. But we just had, like, in the same vein, I just had another one who had an unsuccessful IVF and nothing, she made it to day 3. But her case, I just deep down don't think she needs IVF. And she's just like, not everybody's going to respond well in that level of scrutiny and those meds, and that course of action doesn't work for every single body. And I don't know that we necessarily know why, but it doesn't. But doesn't mean you're without a chance.
Yeah. I think that's why I've always been so gravitated towards your work, because there's so much hope in what you share, and like really talking about all the systems. I know for myself personally, miscarriage, diagnosed with hypothyroidism, and then took years to figure out it was Hashimoto's. And really diving deep into like my stress and I do not handle stress well. My body does not handle stress well. So I even knew before kind of thinking about fertility and like next steps and that I don't think that medicine would ever sit well with me.
Yeah. Because
my system is already doesn't respond well to stress, and that would just cause more stress. So I think it's like really that's just my personal experience, my personal observation. And I did a lot of womb work. I did a lot of internal womb work. And like I went to different healers and I went to therapy. And I really, when I started incorporating that's when things shifted. And I've always believed in that. But I think like I was getting older. I was like, okay, like we got to focus, like figure this out. Like, let's go. It's now or never take situation. And then I'm like, okay, but I need to bring in some of those beautiful experiences that I know keep me feeling like I'm on the right path. Yeah.
And like right, I'll say I use vitamin J a lot for joy. And then also, that nourishment on the soul level, right? We're so focused on, and I included, like, did you get all your protein in today and all your vegetables? But like, did you also do something that's good for your soul today? What have you put on hold because of this journey? And I think too, like, not knowing everything about your case too, but I think it's like the miscarriages are such a like, my body's failing me, my body's rejecting this. And it starts to create this disconnect where you're like, in Chinese medicine, there's this heart uterus connection, which to us, the path needs to be open for fertility to thrive. And the trauma just starts to slice the path, and it closes it off. And so, and going back and doing the womb work, doing like the hypnosis, doing the spirit baby work, like reading those books, even just like entertaining the idea that the spirit of your child is there and wants to come through, and it's also their timeline, and having that conversation, it just kind of opening that up and getting more spiritual. Yeah, you just see, or hope, just allowing yourself to have hope. I've been saying lately, if you give yourself permission to worry and think all the things that could go wrong every day, but then if you're willing to give yourself permission to do that, you should also be willing to give yourself permission to spend some time in the hope daydreaming category. It's hard, it's scary, it's hard to be optimistic when you've been so let down, but it is. And then also, like, now we also know doing things like that shifts your nervous system, like we would say, gets you into the receptive mode, right? That's the spiritual energy. Like, that's, you're now receiving, you're not just blocking and saying, and this is wrong and this is to blame, and this, it's very defensive, very, and I get it. No, there's no wrong feeling. And I think that's another, huge issue out there right now, is like every emotion is really valid and you're allowed to feel it. It's just, what are you going to do with it? And are you letting it make your decisions in every single moment of every single day? And are you even connected to it? So I think, like what you were saying, the womb work just kind of allowed you to like come back home and be like, wait, this is a safe place. And, these things, this does make sense. Or also just going in the direction of what feels good versus, what we tend to see too of, you're on the hamster wheel, IVF, my insurance covers it, I'm just going to keep going and going and going. And it's like, there's no connection there. So, I think a lot of the work is coming back home, and it's the hardest part of the work. No one really wants to do that work because it's much easier to take 1,000 milligrams of NAC every day and think it's treating your endo. You know what I mean? It's like, and not that it's not,
Definitely.
but your endo also is an inflammatory condition. So you have to think about the nervous system and the dysregulation playing a part. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. Yeah. And I recorded the conversation I had with a spiritual advisor, and it's like everything she said came true. Everything. Yeah. A month before it happened. And I was like, okay.
And here we are.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So I've always believed in that, but now I'm going to cry again. But like, I just think it was such a beautiful experience to be able to experience and like share with others and like really tapping in. But I think that experience, even if it hadn't happened, it just helped me settle back into my body because I was so in my body.
And that's it. With like, right. I mean, what was the book? Oh God, I can't believe I'm blanking on it. When she goes to India, and it's like very, very famous book.
Oh, Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah, Eat, Pray, Love. And she goes and sees that shaman, and he was like, he shows her a picture of her head cut off, and like it's over here. And I try to do that visualization with my girls too, where it's like, just this, we're leaving this out of the equation. What does my heart say? What does my uterus say? What does the cells in my body say? And just that thing of like, I think even to the listeners of, if this is resonating with you and you're on the fertility journey, it's like you're listening because, or you're here, even if it doesn't feel like you have hope, you're here because you have hope. You know what I mean? Like even you, Katie, like exploring and having those conversations and being available to it. The hope is there. It's just back in a corner somewhere because you're really scared to look at it, and so give it a little more airtime. And also honor the fear. I'm scared to have hope because I've had so much loss, and okay, that's okay. So, but does that mean that the door's closed, friend, forever? Because that's your decision. You actually get to make that decision. You might feel cornered into that decision, but like, or is the door open or slightly open because you just want to have one foot in right now? And I try to like, because I always say that to girls. Okay, like, so you're scared shitless to get pregnant again because you've had so many miscarriages. So does that mean we're not going to try? And then, oh my God, no, I'm still, okay. Okay, so you're still trying. Okay. So what does that feel like? And then what will it feel like when you get a positive? And it is scary. And the more you know about pregnancy and what could go wrong, the scarier it gets. I mean, I had never had fertility challenges, and knock on wood, it just took me a while to find my partner. But when I got pregnant with James, I remember my mother saying to me, like, at what point are you going to let yourself be excited? And I was just like, you don't know the shit I've seen. Like, I was like, I was like 16 weeks when I see all his body parts and they're all in the right place. Yeah, I'll buy a crib. I was like, okay, that's when I'll do it. But until then, and then even at 16, I was like, well, let me just wait till the 20-week scan. I was kind of like, yeah. Because I was 40, right? Almost 41. And I was just like, but you don't know. But it's unfortunate for women who are going through fertility challenges when they lose the ability to be naive about the ability to get and stay pregnant. Sucks.
Yeah, for sure. Such a beautiful conversation. I hope everyone listening can just take a moment just to sit with that and just feel it, because there's a lot of hope there. On a different path for a moment, I'm super curious if you can share with everybody a little bit more about when you go to fertility clinic, they give you like a 1-pager, eat more vegetables.
I shared like it was like an offensive reel the other day on my stories, but it was really funny. It was some actor just like talking really like slow and distorted, and it was like your fertility doctor when you ask them about nutrition for fertility, it was just like like a Charlie Brown almost voice,
Yeah. Like that's not where you're going to get this information. Okay. So for everyone listening, I would love for you to walk us through a little bit more about the egg quality diet, what that consists of, what people should be looking to incorporate more of, maybe take some things away if that's something to look at that we should talk about for a little bit.
Yeah. And the first thing I want to say too, just like on that transition point of, I think it's really important to know the value of the people on your team and what their expertise is or are. And so my IVF doctor is good at retrieving eggs, good at fertilizing embryos, state-of-the-art lab, is not the person I'm going to go to for nutrition on egg quality, and sometimes not for supplements either. I'm going to have a supplement and diet person, right? I'm going to he's not the person you're going to go to, or she's not the person you're going to go to for spirit baby readings. You know what I mean? That's really obvious too. So think about that of like, okay. And it's unfortunate for you that it's not all one-stop shopping. I so wish it was, right? You got to pay out of pocket for coaching with, people like us and things like that. And that, anyway, so to that point, and they're just not up on research. I think the average doctor gets a couple hours of nutrition education in their entire career, and they don't have to do any CEUs on things like this. And so, and in all honesty, in their defense, they don't have time to sit and do this research. It's just not what excites them. What excites them is what improves implantation rates or what improves fertilization rates. And that's what you want them for, right? They're the experts at that. And they're also not going to tell you your eggs may get better with age. When your AMH increases and you got 2 years older, they're going to be like, some kind of fluke on the lab. Do you know what I mean? That they're not going to take it seriously. So just kind of know what you're going to get out of each person on your team. And I think it does take a team. So when it comes to hormones and fertility and things like egg quality and semen quality and uterine environment, I think what we know is, and again, using that trendy word inflammation, reducing inflammation is going to help you. And then I also think to that same level, improving nutrient absorption is really going to help you, because sometimes it's not that you have a terrible diet or something like that. It's more your body is having a hard time digesting some of the foods you're eating. Even it could be healthy foods. They could be beans or nuts or seeds or nightshade vegetables. It could be gluten and dairy and soy. Like it could be all of those. And what's happening is everyday exposure, or even a couple times a week exposure to those types of things. I see it a lot with my Hashi's cases, especially of like nightshade vegetables seem to be a big trigger for a lot of people. And when we take them out, they're like, oh, my skin rash went away. My eczema is better. And so it's not a, quote unquote, bad food, if you will, but it's compromising your body's ability to absorb nutrition, or it's creating more of an inflammatory state in your gut, and that's impacting the microbiome. And so you really want to, like, that's why I wrote the egg quality diet was, sure, I think there's a a right way to eat. But even in yes, you can get pregnant. I didn't say you had to cut out gluten and dairy altogether. I think soy is really compromised in the United States, and elsewhere, unless it's organic and sprouted and non-GMO and consumed and fermented and consumed in moderation. But like soy cheese, soy milk, like all the processes. So I think if we were to like sum it up, yeah, processed foods should go out, and nutrient dense, wholesome foods should stay in. And then, and the egg quality diet, like we have it with my coaches, it'll be like, oh, should we put her on more of a yes, you can get pregnant style diet or the egg quality diet? And typically if there's autoimmune, we're going right to egg quality diet, or we suspect autoimmune, or there's been multiple losses, endometriosis. Those are usually where we'll go. But I think I like to focus on, and as someone who's had a history of an eating disorder too, I don't do well if someone tells me I can't have something. I want to just rebel. And so it's focusing on, can we increase the protein intake? I think I see food diaries all day long and have for over a decade. And the number one thing most women do is they don't eat enough, and they don't eat enough protein, and they typically don't even eat enough vegetables. And so getting them to eat more, getting them to focus on breakfast, trying to get 30 grams of protein with breakfast. So I have a general rule of thumb, 80 to 100 grams of protein, just really depends on the person, their activity level, their constitution, and then 6 to 8 servings of vegetables. And if we do that, we're kind of covering our macros. There's some research, it's small, but it's promising, that women who eat about 35% protein, 40-ish, 45% fat, and the rest carbohydrates from vegetables mainly, and good quality grains, I think it's like 20-25%. So I'm not low carb by any means. I think low carb is such a stress on most bodies. Certain people can do it, but there was 2 studies, and it showed almost a 4-fold increase in pregnancy rates over a period of time. And then in women doing IVF, that kind of switched to those macros. Same thing. They had I think they collected like 3 times as many, or got that 3 times as many good quality embryos or something like that. It's in the book. But to me too, I mean, what I love about the egg quality diet, and it was in Body Belief as well, is it's an elimination diet. And so people look at it and they're like, if they just open to page like 60, they're like, oh my God, I can't eat anything, but the thing everybody has to remember is we slowly eliminate, then we kind of stay cruising for like about 30-ish days, and then we slowly reintroduce, so we can learn what your body likes and what it doesn't like. And also that's going to change over time too. So, we might revisit, but thinking about like good quality nutrient dense foods, good quality protein. I'm all for animal proteins. I'm not against them, but we can work with vegetarians. Most vegetarians tend to eat too many carbs and too many, if they're not properly soaking or sprouting their nuts and seeds and beans. And so that can cause nutrient malabsorption as well. So, but I think those are good general rules of thumb. We try to keep added sugar out of the diet, or at least under 10 grams. I don't think everybody has to be gluten-free. I mean, Hashimoto's, I think there's pretty valid research that gluten, dairy, and soy are going to trigger your antibodies. And so I tend to tell them to treat it like an allergy. But everybody else, like, you cut it out, reintroduce it if you feel good. For me, like, I can have some dairy. It has to be raw. It has to be organic. It has to be in moderation. If I had it every day, my eczema will flare up. I don't have Hashimoto's, but I definitely had endometriosis when I was younger. You know what I mean? And I get really bad eczema, and I was an asthmatic, right? So I definitely have these little curious illnesses, if you will, and it starts to flare if I, but I wouldn't have never learned that if I didn't do how I did it with the elimination diet. And so I like to look at it as you get to figure out what your fertility is versus, you have to eat beans every day and eggs and, whatever the protocol is to try to figure it out. But it's overwhelming, and I get that. However, I think food is the primary medicine. But I would say that that's really on par with mental, emotional health as well. I think they're kind of right there at the same juncture.
So I wanted to do a little bit of a just personal question. If
yeah.
What are some of your non-negotiable self-care things just to keep you, I mean, you're holding space for all of these people who are going through huge things in their lives, right? So what are you doing to take care of yourself while holding space for all of these other people?
Yeah, it's been a work in progress for sure. I have a good team. I'll say that. I have good support. I have healthier boundaries than I've ever had. I go to therapy every other week, and she's great, and we do all sorts of stuff. I love the spiritual. I have some energy healers I work with. I get acupuncture. My non-negotiables tend to be like my time every day, whether that's out in the garden or walking the dog or both, or my exercise classes or we have a sauna downstairs and we have a gym, that kind of thing that um, and it's not some fancy house. It was more like that was a huge priority to us of like, I need this space for me. I need to be able to leave. My blue light glasses, my sleep is like a non-negotiable for me. Um, Quality relationships, learning to say no. And also I've gotten much better to probably a lot of my clients. What's the word, like chagrin, like they don't love it, but like I'm done with emails at 3:30 every day of the week, and on Friday I'm done at noon, and I'll be back on Monday. If there's an emergency, it needs to say urgent in the subject line, but I don't even check my emails on the weekends anymore. Like I'm done, and same with social media of like I'll do it for work, but like prior to us recording, we're talking about like television. I watch a show with my husband at night. It's usually he picks it. I literally am like along for the ride with that. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, whatever you want to watch, honey. Like I like to read. So like right now, this time of year here, gardening is like my thing, and landscaping and being out there, and like I love getting in the dirt, and it just feels like it gets it out. And I've gotten better. I had to get better at asking for support and calling in the right team and like drawing the line of like, this is mine and this is yours. And I think that's a work in progress for certain. But it's also, and I had to go deep spiritually, years ago before I even thought of becoming a mother. Someone had given me the book Spirit Babies, one of my clients, because she thought, and she had gone through losses, and I was starting to get to that place where I was just so angry about all the, I don't do well with injustice. Injustice, just as per some of our conversation before, like it can like shut me down. And then I kind of like, I lament, and it could, anyway, she gave me Spirit Babies because she probably saw that in me. And it changed it so much. And I do a lot of Abraham work. I'm a huge student of Abraham Hicks. It's like she changed my life. Or they changed my life. And so, it just kind of depends. I have all my little things that I need. And I guess I've been doing it long enough that I know what I need when I need it most of the time. But boundaries were a big one for me. I was really leaky for years, as I would say, and I'm not leaky anymore.
Of a lot of women, especially when we're in business, going into business, running our own businesses, it's tough to assert yourself, and you don't want to come off as aloof or cold or bitchy or any of those things. So it can be really hard. But I love that you're saying that, because it's something I talk about with my students all the time as well, and in my own world. And yeah, it's a tough one to be able to do, but then it makes everything so much better. That, as hard as it is, when you start seeing the benefits of it, it's like, oh gosh, that's overwhelmingly beneficial.
Yeah. I mean, self-care is so important. And so, I guess for me, what I usually recommend, and you probably do too, is like, you have a toolbox and you get to pick out of it. You don't have to I go through phases where I meditate every day, 10, most of the time now it's 7 minutes in the morning, and I just kind of set my intentions and sip my tea and look at nature, or I get outside in nature, and it's just like preparing for the day. And, knowing it's not easy, I was thinking about it because I'm going to do a post, a reel of like, I think we had like 5 pregnancies last week. Amazing. Every one of them is a more amazing story than the next. But then I had a miscarriage, and then we had a miscarriage, and then we had one woman get 2 PGT normals. One woman failed her IVF. Right. It's literally like, and to hold space for all that, it's a lot. But also I think that's why they come to us. They know that we have the skill set, and have seen it all, and can, as we process it, help them process it, and I always say I have the luxury of having hope for you because I've been doing this for 2 decades, and I can count on, I used to say one hand, now I say two hands. I can count on 2 hands, like the cases that it, in my head, it didn't work for, but not in their life. Like they moved on to beautiful things. So do you know what I mean? It's like they chose not to pursue child, whereas other women chose in different directions, and there's never a wrong, right? But I have the luxury of having hope because I do get to see it work out. And it's like, you're in the thick of it now. You're going through what I think is, I would consider one of the worst challenges you've ever gone through. And it's like, you will get to the other side of it. So I don't know, at the end of the day, I guess I still come back to that. And what's my intuition there for them, and I try to be as honest as I can with my patients.
Yeah. Beautiful.
That makes me feel good. Yeah.
Beautiful. So before we close out, we like to do a little light of questions. But before we hit those, tell our listeners where people can find you. What are the socials? Free gift if you have one for the audience.
Yeah, I believe we have a free 5-part video series, something entitled "Can I Actually Improve My Fertility?" And I definitely hit on the mental emotional in at least one of those video series, one of those videos. And then, yeah, I'm pretty active on Instagram. The handle is just my name at Aimee Raupp. And then everything else you can find on my website, aimeeraupp.com. I have a pretty big YouTube channel as well. We're constantly, I go live every other week, or I don't know. Yeah, every other week on Instagram. I have a fertility hot seat and a live Q&A. And then all of those go onto YouTube as well. So, there's a ton of volume of information, kind of since social media started and YouTube started, probably, I guess we're going on 10 years or something like that. There's a volume of information. So yeah, there you have it. I think I'm pretty findable.
Nice. All right. So go with your guts, hit your intuition, first answer, best answer. I'm going to kick us off with, what's your biggest craving?
Right now, cottage cheese. It's the strangest thing. I want like organic cottage cheese on sliced tomatoes with sea salt. It's like all I want. I said it to my husband last night. So strange.
So I'm assuming that's what you eat. What if you're
you
don't have it?
I'm buying organic cottage cheese. And same thing as I said before, I'm going to watch how it impacts me. But so far, so good.
Nice. What's your favorite way to move?
I'm really into strength classes right now, or long walks with the dog.
What's the number one self-care thing that you're doing when you feel stressed?
Getting out of this office and away from my desk and leaving my phone somewhere and like either listening to music or, getting outside into nature. Nature is like definitely my zone.
What music do you listen to when you're working?
When I'm working, I don't. When I'm not in the office, right now I'm listening to this yacht rock station that I'm like obsessed with. I don't know why, like I love Linda Ronstadt, I don't know. Anyway, Fleetwood Mac, I'm like kind of in like a 70s, 80s genre right now.
That's fun. Favorite country or place you visited?
That's tough. I'd probably say Ireland. I have like a heart in Ireland. Yeah.
Favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving or Labor Day, because that's my birthday and my son's birthday, and we always have like a big to do, which is fun too.
It's fun. Is there any food that you don't like?
Well, can't eat versus don't like, two different things for me. Like I can't touch anything with soy. I get like violently ill, and so does my son. And don't like. I'll like eat anything, especially if it's good quality and then like a fancy chef made it. No, I can't really think of anything I don't like.
We'll go with soy since it makes you feel sick.
Yeah. I mean, I don't eat things like
Like
Doritos or Cheetos. Like I would never touch that stuff. Like it's just like, it doesn't appeal to me at all. Like I'm like, oh, but.
Yeah. Pumpkin spice, yay or nay?
Sure. I love like a chai latte kind of situation, or a chai tea. And that thing makes me think pumpkin spice. Yeah. Not a candle, but like a drink. Yeah.
Do you cook?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Favorite place to work?
Favorite place to work. I mean, I love this office that I've made for myself, I love my clinics too. They're beautiful and very, they've been with me a long time. So I guess it just depends. But they're all my spaces. I did create them and design them, if you will. Yeah.
And last question, what's your ideal Friday night?
Friends, good food, and being with my family, like that makes me want to cry. It's just like they're my everything. So, wherever I am with them, I didn't, I waited a long time to have that, and it's all I want to be with.
I love that. This was such a beautiful conversation. I don't know what it is, but every time I see you, I cry. So thank you.
You made me cry. So thank you.
Very emotionally cleansing. Such a beautiful conversation. I love that there's that hope there and that there's also tangible things that women can do to support their health, improve their egg quality, and just have answers and just know that they're not on this journey alone. So thank you so much for being here. And for everyone else, definitely check out Aimee. She has amazing information. Her books are incredible. And we are so grateful for your time today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you both so much. Thank you. And thanks to everybody who's listening. Thank you.
And we will see all of you on our next episode of Period Besties. Until then, bye.
A big shout out and thank you to our sponsors for today's episode, Period Coaching School and Katie Bresek Wellness.
Thanks to you, our favorite bestie, for listening to the Period Besties podcast, where no topic is TMI. And of course, share this episode with your besties.
Remember to leave us a 5-star review, nothing less than the best for us besties, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can follow us on Instagram at Stasha Washburn and at Katie Bresek, or email us at periodbestiespodcast@gmail.com.
Check out more about us at katiebresek.com and periodcoachingschool.com. And of course, check the show notes for free goodies and extras that support this episode.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye for now, besties.